Dans News Extra aujourd'hui, je rends hommage à services Mathilda TWOMEY, qui son mandat comme service LAKOUR SIPRENM et terminé sa semaine. C'est à travers une session cérémoniale qui est faite dans la cour numéro 1, la cour que Mme TWOMEY travaille pendant sa dernière 5 ans, une session qui est faite mercredi le 30 septembre, son dernier jour de l'office.
5 years ago, the Seychelles judiciary was in shambles. The backlog of cases just kept on increasing due to bad practices, policies, and resources. In one of his earlier speeches, Chief Justice Igonda Ntende remarked that if the Seychelles judiciary were a person, it was a patient in the ICU of a hospital. It is perhaps safe to say that the patient has now been released from hospital, but must still come in for regular checkups. It is hoped that the impending change of his medical doctor does not put the patient back into ICU. End of quote. Unfortunately, Chief Justice Igonda Ntende's departure and the 12-month gap had created a leadership vacuum, and much of his work came undone. I was overwhelmed by the backlog and could not believe that people had waited so long for their cases and for their judgments. Transcripts of proceedings were not in files. Files were in disarray. Staff morale was low. There were unnecessary and meaningless court hearings. Cases were regularly adjourned. Judges were unprepared or did not have the information in their case files to adequately prepare. The quantity of cases was high, but the quality of the adjudication was disappointingly low. A culture of apathetic mediocrity and professional protectionism on the bench and at the bar had stymied the judicial process. We set to work. We revived the same objectives and recommitted ourselves to an agenda of change. We standardized procedures and improved our record and case management. We recruited new magistrates and judges, researchers, a public relations officer, specialists in the library and archives. We adjusted the management structure, giving greater autonomy to section heads. We appointed thematic committees and attempted to devolve power and decision-making to leaders within sections. I am proud of the team that I have been able to work alongside, from the excellent judicial officers, the dedicated registry staff, management team, and other support staff. We have worked so hard, but we have also had some really enjoyable moments together. We have made tremendous progress, and I have found the last week of reminiscence with the judiciary staff a pleasant time of reflection on the changes that have been made. But I would be lying if I said things were all good. We have not achieved all of our goals. We have not even come close. Our annual reports, our statistics, and our judgments are indicative of positive changes. However, we remain the most vulnerable arm of government, and my hope is that my successor will manage to remain vigilant to the challenges that threaten the judiciary. Today I am ending my term, not for any of the speculated reasons that I have heard so many, and I have heard so many, but rather because I am a person of my word. Seychelles is small, but it has a seat at the international table that it could take up if it were willing to rise above its self-set limitations. I believe that we currently underachieve. We sell ourselves short with petty infighting, political bargaining, and hostility to much-needed foreign capacity building. We should be humbled by the importance of the roles that we get to play and remain inspired by our potential. And so today, I wish to make 5 calls to action, one for each year I have been Chief Justice. The first call to action is that we insist on adding meaningful and practical constitutionalism to our written constitution. It is the people of Seychelles who 27 years ago voted to adopt a new constitution. We came together as a nation and agreed to start to build a new Seychelles, one where the rule of law is upheld, where fundamental human rights and freedoms of all are valued, and where accountability and transparency are the norm and not the exception. We put into motion a blueprint for a society in which the inherent dignity of all human beings is recognized and respected. We embarked on a journey to entrench constitutionalism into the fabric of Seychellois society. By constitutionalism, I do not mean abstract values, lofty aspirations and principles, but rather the permeation of its principles felt at all levels of society. I cannot help but feel that not everyone has been allowed to cross the bridge to constitutionalism. And one of these reasons is that the very persons responsible for its construction maintenance, and implementation are also in the position to pull it down. And sometimes those trying to hold it up receive little or no support. I am concerned by the underutilization of the courts for breaches of human rights. Outside of the courthouse, I am aware of the gaps in the protection of some groups of people in Seychelles. These include people with mental health difficulties, disabled persons, children from broken homes, abused women, foreigners, especially unskilled laborers, and persons who are LGBTI+. Consciously or unconsciously, our society treats these groups as less deserving of the equality promised by our Constitution. We use, abuse, and marginalize these groups. We cannot build a just society by leaving certain persons on the margins. I do not know what gives us the authority to choose whose rights to vindicate and whose rights to ignore. To my second call to action. As a society, we face a severe accountability deficit. During my tenure, we have seen the establishment of the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Human Rights Commission, and the Information Commission. Progressive laws have been passed giving citizens the right to ask for information from the state. We have new laws to combat money laundering and respond to organized crime. Yet ask a person on the street what is wrong in Seychelles and they will say that there is corruption and that administrative transparency is the exception and not the norm. You see, as a society, we demand harsh sentences for a person who steals a pair of shoes, or a drug addict who breaks into a house to get enough money for his next fix. But we turn a blind eye to suspicious and missing transactions amounting to millions of dollars, to notaries who permit forgeries, to judges who change transcripts, to public servants who take bribes and make policy-breaking miracles happen. We need to start to hold people to account, even when there are people who are well-loved or wealthy or powerful. White-collar crime is as serious as the possession of drugs or theft of coconuts or driving without a seatbelt. White-collar crime, fraud, and embezzlement go to the very character of the individual. And where these individuals are persons in positions of trust, the lack of integrity threatens the fabric of our community. We should demand that leaders are people of untouchable integrity. The rich and powerful who facilitate crimes and those who merely turn a blind eye to crimes ought to be dealt with like any other citizen. We have a double standard. This accountability deficit threatens to delegitimize our institutions. People ask me why the courts don't do anything. The courts don't investigate crimes. They adjudicate them. If these crimes are not before the courts, they are not being reported, investigated, or prosecuted. If this is the case, we need to ask why. However, accountability should not be used to penalize persons who are brave enough to whistleblow. At one point, having performed my judicial duties, a high-profile politician publicly said that I would be made to pay for my judgment. When one MNA uttered misleading and defamatory statements about the judiciary and judicial officers, we had to confront the then Speaker of our constitutional right of reply in the National Assembly. We have faced countless other threats and bullying over the past 5 years. But during this time, no one came to the defense of the judiciary. Not one politician in the whole Assembly. Not one member of the executive. The judiciary cannot defend itself. Its legitimacy and justification lies in its decisions, which are public documents for all to see. When attacked, the victim is not only the judge at the receiving end of these attacks, but future judges, future litigants, and the Constitution itself. My third call for action, a call for dismantling patriarchy. In 1981, when I was working as a court interpreter, waiting to go overseas to start studying, it was incomprehensible that there would be a woman on the bench. The thought that women could hold such important positions was simply not an option. Throughout my career and that of my female peers, my qualifications and ability have been a footnote to my gender. People say, for a woman, she's a good lawyer. During my time on the Constitutional Commission as the only female lawyer there, I was called un petit femme arasée, an angry little woman. I have never heard of a man being called an angry little man. If I were a man, I would probably have been revered for being firm, no nonsense, and committed. Fast forward to 2015, and the patriarchy was alive and well. I stepped into a male-dominated court. The judiciary and legal profession have been extremely slow to transform. After all, I was the first female judicial officer in a superior court in Seychelles history, when I was sworn in as Justice of the Court of Appeal in 2011. Although now better represented, all 5 female judges were only appointed in the last 9 years. I hope that these appointments set a trajectory for other women. We need to keep advocating for transformation and for greater gender representation in this profession. My fourth call, a call to vigilance. The maintenance and realization of the Constitution requires eternal vigilance from us all. As guardians of the Constitution, the courts and judges are looked to and tasked with ensuring constitutional compliance. In a democracy, vigilance will often and should manifest itself in cases before the court. As a result, courts are more vulnerable to external forces because as judges we have far-reaching powers to determine whether conduct falls within the parameters of the Constitution. For courts and judges to discharge their constitutional mandate, their independence must be vehemently guarded. This is a necessity in a functional constitutional democracy. Seychelles continues to fall short of international best practice and remains the only country in Africa without a dedicated Judicial Services Commission. That is, a judicial-led body with members of the bench, the bar, stakeholders, and civil society to handle judicial appointment, performance, discipline, and removal. Furthermore, we have active members of political parties recommending the appointment of and initiating disciplinary processes against judges. But not only in our courts, we have active members of political parties recommending the appointment of and initiating disciplinary processes against also the Attorney General and the Ombudsman and the Auditor General and the Electoral Commission and the Anti-Corruption Commission and the Human Rights Commission and the Truth, Reconciliation and National Unity Committee and the Information Commission and the Seychelles Broadcasting Corporation. This is despite the constitutional demand for members of, quote, proven impartiality. And to make matters worse, we have a current practice that only one name is given to the President for the purpose of appointment of judges. And the media has a particularly important role to play in uncovering the threats to the institutions of our society. A call to courage. In 2015, I received a letter. It was from a man on Prale, whose mother was a quadriplegic as a result of an accident in a Tata bus. I did all I could, I thought, to help him. I spent 5 years affected by the contents of that letter. The response of the people around me, the political ramifications of the decisions that I took in trying to improve the judicial system in order to help people like that man. But now, I am handing over this fine red robe, my lovely office, and massive desk space. And I am hoping that my brothers and sisters that I leave behind will be inspired and encouraged as they continue the work. Seychelles may be a small country, but our voice should be loud and principled on the global stage. We have a skilled and committed team on the bench and in the courthouses. My advice is to find a private, honest space to ground you and support you as you take steps in the public space. Stand secure in your own integrity and values. Know them and know what you stand for. Learn to be a bit deaf to the allegations made against you. And most of all, learn to rest when you can, because the fight is ongoing. I encourage you to be courageous. Turning a blind eye to petty corruption, tardy behavior, lack of transparency and accountability delegitimizes our institution. We need to strive towards achieving human rights and not dismantle what has been built. Our judges need to be brave and act justly all the time. How can we trust any judge if they are willing to look the other way when a lawyer steals client money, when a notary notarizes a forged document, when a politician commits an election offense, when a fellow judge rushes through a political case without notice to opposing counsel. For the past 5 years, it has been my responsibility to decide whether or not to take action in each of these cases. I believe I can hold up my head and say I did what was morally and legally required and in the public interest. So I sit here with mixed emotions. I am proud. I am tired. I am sad. I am disappointed. I am sorry that the judiciary is not more. But I promise I will support, I will encourage, I will remain vigilant, and I will join the fight as we continue with the work we have started. Thank you.
All I can do at the moment is to express the heartfelt thanks and deep gratitude of each and every person gathered here for all what you have done for the judiciary of Seychelles. You will always, as stated by many, be a role model to us judges and magistrates. You were subject to unfair and uncalled for remarks and criticism during your tenure, but you countered these obstacles with sheer grit and determination. And through it all, you stood tall. You led by example. If it was hard work, you took it on yourself and set an example for us judges to follow. Your tough, no-nonsense approach to work may have upset a few, but it paid rich dividends and benefited many, especially the litigants who walk our corridors seeking justice. These are the people we as judges are duty-bound to serve. Yes, Your Ladyship, let me assure you, as we say farewell to you, as Chief Justice of the Republic of Seychelles, the record shows you took the blows and did your duty in a perfect and impeccable way.
Before the learned Chief Justice started her legal career, I knew of her as a poet, having read one of her published poems, in which she wrote, in very lovely poetical style, the school life. I wondered at times whether poetry or law was her first love. CJ was a bon vivant, enjoying life to the fullest, never missing a rendezvous with history. Fittingly, CJ, your rendezvous with history culminated with you being appointed and sworn in as the first Lady Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Seychelles. Congratulations and thank you for your spectacular achievements.
I've always enjoyed appearing before you, especially in a perverse sense when you refused to see my point, which was often. Your ability to cut through the Gordian knot of some difficult decisions and focus on the narrow issue to be decided is legendary. If you have sometimes been too blunt in the process, know that I joined others in metaphorically pushing pins in your effigy and vowing never to grace your court again. But in our obvious differences, we nonetheless share a great deal, and it is those things which urge me to say a few words on your leaving office today. First, André Sauzier, mentor and inspirer to many, at whose funeral you asked me to read a small eulogy you had written. Many are we who aspire to walk in the great man's shoes. Few do so. You are amongst the privileged. I know how much you revered him, and you know how much he has contributed to the jurisprudence of our country. In your own way, so have you. Next, our love of our mixed jurisdiction, or the mixity of laws, as you prefer to put it, in general, and the civil code in particular. Your book on the subject is incisive and makes for compulsory reading, and compulsive reading as well. One of the most memorable and enjoyable periods of my career was to have collaborated with you and others here today, both on the bench and at the bar, in reviewing the whole of the Civil Code. While this was your initiative, and the record must show this, I have had the additional honor of steering the code through the National Assembly, the Speaker of whom is here with us today, and we hope that the President, who is equally here today, will assent to it in the coming days.
When I first heard of Her Ladyship's appointment to the position of Chief Justice, I remember remarking that it was a very inspiring moment for young female lawyers in Seychelles. I hoped that her appointment would show that it was possible to be successful in this traditionally male-driven profession as a female. I'm sure that none of my female fellow young lawyers were disappointed. Just as I am certain that all of us in the profession have been more than grateful for the immense change Her Ladyship has brought about in the direction and running of the courts. We can all admit that at the beginning there were growing pains as we learned to adjust to the new systems put in place, but these seem to have dissipated now, and we are all fully appreciative of them. As a young lawyer, having only known Her Ladyship as the Chief Justice, I can only state that I found the systems easy and clear enough to understand, and found that they helped rather than hampered my work. Her Ladyship will be remembered, I am sure, for being understanding to any young lawyer new to the bar. Whilst her hand may have been firm, and we were all aware that she expected us to come to court fully prepared, I am sure we all found her to be calm and understanding whilst we conducted our cases for the first time without the protective wing of our pupil masters.
I had a unique experience in regards to criminal justice in our courts. I was so moved by what happened in a few cases that I was forced to go and look up Shakespeare, Merchant of Venice, The Qualities of Mercy. You have said, Chobo, you can have your pound of flesh closest to the convict's heart, as the law says, but I, as the judge, say, as long as in extracting your pound of flesh, you do not spill one drop of his blood, you can have your pound of flesh. Honorable Chief Justice, the above examples touched me, not only as a lawyer, but as a human being. For what is justice without mercy? This quality of mercy, so long lacking in our judiciary, has given me hope, especially during the mitigation on behalf of convicts.
I've heard many in the legal profession exclaim that although they would like to be a judge, it would be too daunting a task to be the Chief Justice. In future, more must be done by the powers that be to enable the Chief Justice of the day to concentrate his or her time and efforts where it is most needed. For the bar, it is important to us that we have a Chief Justice that we can have access to and open dialogue with. And with Chief Justice, to me, I can say that this has not been an issue. Sometimes issues could be quickly resolved and ironed out, but as you do, sometimes we could not see eye to eye with the judiciary on certain matters. But we had the opportunity to agree to disagree. All things considered, and not taking anything away from her, she was simply a good Chief Justice.
Let me formally announce that this full bench, comprising of elite Supreme Court judges, after hearing today's proceedings, unanimously come to the finding that we are satisfied beyond all doubt, I repeat, beyond all doubt, that all the good and kind words said about our Chief Justice, Dr. Mathilda TWOMEY, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. May God bless you, Chief Justice TWOMEY, with good health and happiness, and let us wish our ladyship continued success in the Seychelles Court of Appeal.
Des conférences la presse plus bonne cette semaine, Dr. TWOMEY qui partage son bon défi et l'accomplissement comme premier service femme, c'est celle. Et tout de même, rester comme ils disent la cour d'appel.
Si je peut-être que vous dire il plus grand highlight ou mandat personally and professionally.
Mon crois premièrement, ce qui m'a plus fier, c'est nos systèmes d'administration caisse et la cour. Mon quoi, ça demande statistique tout à gagner. Il permet nous écoute plus cases, finir plus cases et emmène la justice à la portée de tous citoyens Cécile. Et tout le temps mon message pour tout staff ici qui nous est service. Nous est service les peuples. Nous tous nous là pour servir nos serviteurs. C'est tout qui nous était. La justice pas pour nous. La justice c'est pour tout le monde. Et nous avons besoin d'ouvrir la porte la cour pour recevoir tout le monde. Et ça, ils m'ont plus grand la fierté. Quelque chose qui m'ont quoi, mon c'est achevé pendant les temps qui m'ont là, ça 5 ans qui m'ont là. Deuxième quelque chose, mon promouvoir droit madame. Et moi espérer qui m'ont montré madame Cécile qui sont pas là pour rester dans l'ombre des hommes, qui sont là pour autres en ont toute même opportunité, en ont même droit et débouter et demander et réclamer sa bande droit. Papa vient devant et mon quoi peut-être ça me ça quelque chose là qui est dans mon tête qui m'ont capable de dire m'ont vraiment fier mon fait.
Peut-être quoi qui ou bon plus grand défi qu'on rencontre aussi pendant ça 5 ans.
Mon cause un peu dans quelque chose qui m'ont capable mon quoi vainqueur mais en même temps il même quelque chose qui est un défi pour moi. Les mon arrivé en 2015 mon get ça dit quand tu dis monde qui peut attendre autres caisse fini. Nous tenons caisse 9 ans. C'est une caisse qui même 19 ans. Pas encore fini. Ça type un plus grand défi. Qui moyen ou pour capable faire avocat, faire juge comprend qui est inacceptable. Qui a des monde qui ne paye avocat, qui ne vient devant, qui ne paye son frais pour la cour écoute son caisse pour martyriser pendant tout ça le temps ou pas qu'à donner une réponse ou pas qu'à résoudre son problème. Ça c'est plus grand défi devant moi. Deuxième défi, c'est comment service femme, premier service femme, c'est manque de respect qui dit mon lien pour femme. Bon l'accusation, bon diffamation qui doit faire au moins, c'est pas pour faire les 15 hommes. Et ça aussi, si tu es un homme qui est là, tu peux critiquer par moi. Et mon après un certain temps apprendre qu'il y a dans certaines batailles qui m'ont été choisies, qui est dans quelque chose, bonne critique qu'ils ont fait, qui m'ont pas pu abaisser moi pour m'en ni répondre aux autres, juste pour faire mon ouvrage. Mon faire mon ouvrage et mon quoi qui par exemple pas capable de dire qui on fait ça l'ouvrage pour un madame ou bien fait. Bon les autres comprennent qui m'ont fait ça l'ouvrage comment ils disent, comment ils savent dire et c'est tout. N'a pas d'autre qualification.
Bon advice peut-être pour les autres disent peut-être qui pour venir après eux, justices qui peut-être pour ça ils sont intimidés de sa position qui ou advice pour eux.
Pour autres tenaces, pour autres persévérer et pour autres courager. N'a pas de défi qu'on pas capable de monter, c'est on encourage et qui pas montrer la paix ni la frayeur qui ou prend tout ça bande défi et ou juste faire li par l'ouvrage, c'est tout.
Il paraît que dans mandat qui est on améliore le système judiciaire, le côté administration et on fait un joli travail, paraît public qui bien apprécié, mais qui manière nous as public nous pour gagner ça l'assurance qui ça travaille pour continuer dans ça c'est bien qu'on commence.
Mon quoi c'est pourquoi sa raison après-midi mon amène team judiciaire pour montrer les autres. N'a pas rien qui m'ont fait moi. Mon fait li avec tout ça bande monde qui là et tout ça bande 176 monde qui sont pas aujourd'hui qui derrière moi. Judiciaire pas un monde. Judiciaire il y a un team du monde. Ça bande structure, ça bande support qui nous met en place, c'est bande support et structure durable qui pour continuer. Qui il pas dépendre loin seul du monde. Et c'est ça que du monde doit être comprendre. Ça qui nous ça bande la porte qui nous ouvert, n'a pas personne qui peut venir fermer. Donc, on dit, on comprend que ça la porte pour toujours ouverte. Et pour les autres entrer par la porte et pour les autres réclament sa accessibilité avec la justice. Et il peut continuer, et ça, il n'y a pas un désir, mais il y a l'assurance qui m'en peut dans nous autres.
Despite the undeniable progress the judiciary has made over your 5 years, there have been some fairly high-profile instances where you've had confrontations with other members. Justice KIERAN is the one that comes to mind, and first and foremost, with that in mind, have you felt that in your tenure, the totality of the judiciary has been working with your best interests at heart?
Yeah, the judiciary is not about one person. It's all about the structures and supports in place. It's not about any particular individual. We work as a whole. And the challenges we face together. Any personal attack, any personal criticism on one particular person is taken as a body hit and is responded to in unity by the whole of judiciary. Yes, there have been some personal attacks made on me, but I never saw those attacks as being important. The attacks that I found more important were the attacks against the judiciary itself. And this is the way I would hope people would view that. And that is not a wish I have. That is a matter of fact. That is the way things should operate. So I don't want to concentrate or focus on any personal matters that happened to me. I think I was vindicated in what I did, and I think the office of the judiciary, of the office of the Chief Justice, remains strong. And that's all.
I think you are viewed in the eyes of the public only as a Chief Justice, this kind of like machine-like, fire lady that cannot, nothing bad can happen against her. But you are also a human, so kind of from that human angle, like as just a person, what kind of burdens has the last 5 years placed on your shoulders in terms of the challenges you face?
Well, it's been difficult, and sometimes the work that we did, we could have been distracted. At the end of the day, I'm a mother. At the end of the day, I'm a partner. At the end of the day, I'm a sister. Personal, unfounded accusations hurt not only me, but my family and my friends. So I recognize that. I'm a vulnerable person, like everybody else. I'm a human being. And persons need to appreciate that. We're not Chief Justices in wigs and gowns that don't have blood coursing through our veins. We are ordinary human beings. We hurt, we cry, we laugh. But we also dance, we also celebrate. And this is what we are doing today. We are celebrating. We are celebrating our achievements over the past 5 years. And we will not let any of the vulnerabilities that were attacked distract us from that job.
Mandat comment SEPSIS infini, what's next for you?
Mon continue pour tout mon rôle à la Cour d'appel. Et mon continue comme éducateur. Mon pe assume mon rôle que mon tenant avant. C'est pour continuer éduquer étudiants, mais aussi juges. Et dans la ligne, mon accepté, mon université Lilan nous fait mon position comme un professeur adjoint, qui m'ont accepté. Et aussi l'Institut pour juges l'Afrique, un appointement comme son directeur académique pour un cours qui nous fait bon juges. Et toute l'éducation pour juges et étudiants, et pour mon bénéfice, les autres membres judiciaires et étudiants la loi. Et aussi pour mon propre désir, moi, approfondir mon connaissance dans la loi, qui m'ont pu accepter sa bonne position. Et tout ça, les autres positions, ils ne sont pas permanents, ils ne sont pas full-time, ils existent quelque chose d'extra qui m'ont fait, comment ils disent, qui de toute façon m'ont fait. On continue à faire. Amène l'éducation pour les autres, mon frère, avec mon bon sœur.
Ou tu déjà commencé comme tous les corps de bon comité qui type travail pour protection aux enfants, exode droit, est-ce qu'il y a un travail pour continuer ou bien ou pour arrêter dans ces mains?
Ça projet est bien avancé et mon frère si qui sa position comme chair ou sa comité, il est dans mon propre nom et pas le nom SEPSIS. Et mon fier et mon content pour informer les autres que les 5 mois octobre qui peut venir, nous pouvons proposer un projet de loi qui nous finit, presque fini de rafter. C'est sa comité de travail avec moi, qui nous met paré pour nous présenter avec l'exécutif la loi qui nous propose l'offense sexuelle contre les enfants, les autres monde vulnérables et adultes aussi.
Based in Seychelles?
Indeed, I will be based in Seychelles. My primary job is a Court of Appeal judge. In my spare time, I will continue creating courses for the education of my brothers and sisters, but also for furthering my own legal knowledge.
C'est là aussi que CNews Extra est terminé. Merci pour suivre.